Welcome to 101. I'm Greg Bassey, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper, and today we're continuing our interviews with city council candidates. And today we have the big fish at the table. He's the mayor of Salisbury. He's running for city council, Jim Ireton. Welcome, Jim.
Hi, Greg.
I am kind of distraught about this because you're my mayor. And I'm glad you're going to be on the city council or you're going to run for it, but why do you want to do this?
I think over the last couple of years, it became clear on the real hard decisions that our council has had to make. 90% of the time, every city council votes, as a block, 100%. But I realized that when it came to the issues facing single-family neighborhoods, issues that face families that are living on Russell Avenue or Isabella Street or Division Street or Union Avenue, what we had was not enough support for single-family neighborhoods. We want to try the same old things and see if they work when actually they don't. And I'm talking about amortization of non-conforming uses, overcrowding, those issues. So it became clear to me that though this has been an incredibly amazing experience to be the mayor for the last 6 years, if you're going to change something, you're going to have to do it with a vote. And that's why when the council did pass the 5 districts, I looked where I lived and realized that I was right in the rich heartland of District 4.
Right.
And I know the district's lines pretty well because I drew them.
Yes, you did.
Because I drew them. And I said, how do I protect the people who live on Division Street? How do I protect the people who live on Emerson Avenue? How do I protect the families that live on London? How do I protect the families that, the families that are now coming back to East William Street, the Hessens, or the Stouts that live on Newton Street, or the families that are still living, say, on Winder Street, areas throughout the city. So, and it really comes down to having a vote.
Now, I know there's been a lot of action on the council, in recent years. That seems to be where a lot of the energy is. You've had great energy out of the mayor's office too. I think the administration.
Well, you have to remember that all of that energy that was there, and I'm taking credit for 50% of it.
Yeah.
All of that energy and all of those things that have been sitting there were ones that had been sitting there since I was elected mayor. So we waited to get a council and use our political muscle.
The council was like a big wall in terms of what you wanted to do.
I am happy for myself and for Ms. Smith that we have, Louise Smith, that we have the relationship that we have today that we didn't have when I was mayor and she was the city council president. If the storm comes, I'm going to be the one putting the sandbags outside Canal Woods because that's the respect level and the love that I have for Mrs. Smith. What happened with Mrs. Cohen, Mrs. Cohen got control of the city council and then nothing got done. So it was like, we need somebody to do this. I threw my muscle behind Jake Day, and here we are. All of those things have gotten done. The crime rate down to levels of the 1990s. Downtown,
amazing.
More people. It is amazing. More people living, shopping, eating, drinking in downtown than in 30 years. All of those things. But the fundamental things, the undergird of cities like Salisbury's problem with revitalization is the attraction of single-family neighborhoods and whether or not we can get families to come back and live with them. I believe that is the one and only issue that the city council that we have right now refuses to do anything about, and that's neighborhood preservation and single-family neighborhoods.
Now, you can't deny your passion on the issue now, and I've interviewed all the other candidates, and really, they're talking about jobs a lot.
They shouldn't be doing that. I'm going to tell you right now, you can't do that. If they're talking about crime, it's because they can't accept that it's down to 1992 levels. If they're talking about jobs, jobs are what are done at a macro level at the state.
And I've been puzzled by that.
Companies come in because it's good school systems, good parks and recreation, and that's all things that our county elected officials are throwing by the wayside because they're controlled by Tea Party. Tea Party non-moderates, that's for sure. And I enjoy all of them. They're all pretty much friends of mine, but they don't believe in the same philosophies that I do. So when you look and see where campaign cash is coming from, you can see why we didn't want to talk about rent control, and why we didn't want to talk about amortization, and why we didn't want to talk about taking the 4-2s and the 4-3s and the 4-4s back to, to good neighborhoods. So it's a juxtaposition that they find themselves in. They want to talk about the curfew, but they don't. It depends on the audience that they're talking to. If they're talking to an elderly lady who lives on Delaware Avenue that Chief Duncan and I've been working with, that has had her windshield broken in and everything stolen off our porch. We've got to do something about these young kids.
Right.
If they're talking to a parent who doesn't think that their kid does anything wrong, they're like, we need to do more for kids.
Right.
It is not the city government's job to raise children, and it is not the city government's job to give every single solitary tax break it possibly can to a business to get them to come here. Because as Jake Day and I will tell you, that doesn't work, because that means the next city down the road is going to up the ante and give more, and they're going to be gone.
Right.
It's about transportation, it's about water and sewer, it's about schools, it's about parks and recreation. That's the juxtaposition that we have, the problem here that we have in Wicomico County, is that the city is so different from the county, and the landed gentry that make all the money here, the establishment that you like to call it,
That's what I call it.
doesn't live inside the city limits of Salisbury.
Right. Which is a tragedy in my view.
Well, if you want to be a part of that crowd, then you get, when people who live inside the city limits say there's a problem, then you're just your rabble rouser.
Right.
You don't know what community is. This is the new thing, unity at the end of community. That's okay for those people as long as they're friends and they're contemporaries and their good old boy network's making money.
Well, and I have to say, I've been in this rental issue from 4 to 2 for 13 years.
Well, it didn't work.
I've been debating this thing, or hearing the debate about it.
Yeah.
And I love your passion for it, and you understand it way more than me. I'm puzzled, because if I was a candidate, especially in the new district system with much smaller voter bases, much more neighborhood focus, if it was a problem, I think I would talk about it more with my constituents.
They don't want to talk about it, because if you go down the list of campaign contributions, everybody's taking money from the people who own those houses.
Right.
They were converted from 4 to 2s to 4 to 3s and 4 to 4s. I mean, it's going to be 50% of the money that's been given in this election to all of these candidates is going to be given from the rental industry. Now, I'm not saying that that they don't have the right to do that. I would walk through hell barefoot for their right to do it. But I am saying, if we don't wake up and realize that somebody like my opponent has 80% of his money coming from landlords, and only 2 of the people who gave to him live inside the city limits, but it's the same old ones. And I enjoy these people, so I'm going to say their names out loud. Mr. Wilgus, Mr. Rainier, Mr. Cannon, Ms. Bratton, Mr. Martin. All of them are people who, we all live here, we all have to shop here. But none of these people, except for Lynn and Mr. Littlefield, who runs Adams Rentals, have to live inside the city limits. So when we talk about the issue of a 4 to 4 house being more valuable than a house that is 4 to 2 because of the money it can bring in, if we talk about the overcrowding, if we talk about the amortization of non-conforming uses, if we talk about the houses in Newtown that should be worth $500,000 and aren't because of what is next door to them, we can't talk out of both sides of our mouths. We can't say we need to increase home ownership. That's another thing that all the candidates are talking about. We need to increase home ownership. Well, you can't get people to come here if they don't want to live next door to what you're protecting because of your campaign.
Right.
And it is a juxtaposition for me, because I was there when Debbie Campbell beat Michael Day, back when, the Michael Day, Mike Dunn, Lynn Cathcart, that group was sort of in with all the landlords. But what bothers me most of all, Greg, is that this is the only thing we have to talk about. We have to solve the undergird of these problems is our neighborhoods. It has to do with how the school system draws the lines. It has to do with the rental industry having control over everything. And it has to do with a real honest discussion with the university of where they want their students to be.
Right.
I do that, and my failing as a candidate, and really as a public servant, and as a mayor, and as a Jim, is just that I see it much more in terms of black and white. I'm getting ready, and I'm pretty confident that I'm going to win my 4th city election in the last 20 years in this town. So I am reasonably confident that I have an idea of where the voters are in this city. I don't know where the chambers, I don't know where the establishment is, I don't know where those people that you say, it is not the Salisbury of 1980, it is not the Salisbury of Mayor Morris, it's not the Salisbury of Mayor Martin. We still have a problem with income inequality, because the same 5 people make all the money, and everybody else is expected to work in the strip mall or be a public servant and not make any money at all in terms of what we're doing. That being said, I don't want to sound like I'm not proud and happy about what we do here. We've got some amazing families that have come back into our neighborhoods, and we need to nurture that and protect that at all costs, because when they go, when the next generation of elderly people who live in our town, like there's a lovely lady named Mrs. Baker who has lived on Buena Vista Avenue for 54 years, and I've been going to her house in every election since about 1988. and I never get her at home. And I finally got her at home the other day. I went to the front door. She was cooking. She came. She's wonderful. She said, we finally get to meet one another after all these years. But she says, she says, I love what you're doing. I love downtown. I love Chief Duncan. I love that we got Rick Hoppus. And then she lowers her voice and says, but you know, the house next door, they're getting ready to move to Florida to retire. And I'm really worried about what's... And it's almost like we're afraid to say, I'm sorry, Mr. Rainier. I'm sorry, Mr. Cannon. I'm sorry, Mr. Martin. All the $73 million a year that you make out of this place every year, you can't be held a little bit more responsible for it. It bugs me. It bugs me that we live in a place where renters now are being told you're going to put this sign in your yard, even though the law clearly states that they have control of the land as well. And candidates and their wives, including my opponent and his wife, accost people who don't want to put up their signs. What year is it, Greg Bassett?
Right.
What year is it? So tell me what questions you have.
Well, you know, I understand your passion on that. I love what the city has done.
But there are other things. Let me go through them.
Sure. I love what you've done with this, where you're going to buy the bad houses and...
Well, we're going to tear them down. It's not buy them.
Well, we're going to
tear them down because they've been sitting there.
And you've got some money in the account where you're going to do something with them.
Yeah. And that's what I worry about, that might be, I'm glad we did it, but it's short-sighted because it doesn't solve the problem. It allows the house to evolve to the point where we've got to go get it,
right,
instead of taking care of the problem before it gets that way. Other than that, I mean, there's the issue of an in-house city attorney. I don't believe that we should pay $280,000 a year for an attorney that has other clients. I don't have any problem with the work that Mr. Tillman does. In fact, I believe that he is a strong supporter of our neighborhoods. But I don't believe that he should have...
because of him.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I believe that we should have our own lawyer. I don't believe we should be sending that. We should be spending more money on paving. We should be spending more money on the arts. We've got to get those arts groups together and say, stop arguing with one another. Let's build a performing arts center downtown. Those are the type of votes that I know that Jake will expect from me as mayor and that I will be able to give to him. There is times in city government when you have to spend money to make money. And every dollar we spend for the arts, we're going to get $6 back. We should be funding all of that. We should still be talking about rent control. We should still be talking about non-conforming uses. We should still be talking about protecting the Paleo Channel. I'm going to be votes for all of those things. But I do have to fall back and say to you that I believe the most important thing to Salisbury revitalization is not downtown. It is whether or not our neighborhoods are places where people can raise their children safely, quietly, where elderly people can retire and not have to worry that some house next door that's generating $1,600 a week for one of these jokers is you're going to get we should all link pinks and make a caring circle and work together. That's what you're hearing now. Right. I want everybody at the table. I love Jack Heath. I think he's a great guy. He says he wants to see Plan B. Plan B was in 1980. We're now down to Plan X, and we're still getting, we want everybody at the table. I'm not exactly sure. With landlords and the fire service agreement, I'm not sure what else the city is supposed to give it away. Tim Mayer, who was on the Mayor's Disability Council, said it so greatly the other night when we had a meeting. He said, we've been giving it away to everybody for years. Could we possibly just stop? And you know, that's a Middle Boulevard, 40-year resident of Salisbury. He knows exactly what goes on here. I am proud of the 6 years that I had because I believed that Salisbury needed a hammer. Somebody needed to say, we're going to do this downtown. We're going to get this crime rate down. We're going to get these cops into the street. We're not going to put up with this crap in the neighborhoods anymore. And I was proud to do it because I never had to worry about somebody writing me a check that was going to come back and go, hey, I need you to do this for me. Or I need you to be a part of the good old boy wink, wink, nudge, nudge. As long as you're making money and I'm making money, let's just make sure everybody's, an MOU. I love those, that when I hear those, an MOU. I want an MOU with the city.
But Ken, you, having been the man, been the hammer, sit there at the table with 5 others and have to worry about getting 3 votes and building a consensus.
Well, I can tell you this.
It just sounds like a drag to me.
No, not at all, because that's where the real work is done. And Jake said the other day, in terms of working with council people and managing council people, and I may not have done a good enough job of that. Shaney and I, Salisbury, I said it during the NAACP forum the other day. They were like, what do you love most about Salisbury? What is it about Salisbury that reflects you and your values? And I said, for me, it's a town of 1,000 moms. Everywhere you go, there's somebody whose mom you knew who picked you up from school, or who was somebody's teen mom, or was a den mother in Cub Scouts, or just all of those things. Shani is one of those people for me, having gone to school with Terrence at East Salisbury School, and I probably could have done a little bit better job with those issues, because all of us really know what the problem is. The question is whether or not we have the intestinal fortitude and the courage to say, it's now year 40 with these jokers. Are we still going to make the same mistakes over and over? Are we still going to let the Chamber of Commerce say the only way to attract business here is to give tax cuts? If I laid out for you, and I could spend another 15 minutes talking to you about everything that I've done with the Chamber of Commerce to reduce the cost of business inside the city limits, the dropping of the EDUs, the paving requirements, all of those things.
Yeah.
But until the national economy completely recovers, and then Salisbury comes after it, like it always does, we're going to have that Labanal goes, but Cadista expands.
Right.
We're going to have those ups and downs. And that is a national issue with, does America make anything anymore? Or is it just is everything going to be the information age? So we have to figure out where we're going to go from there. But I, as I said before, I think infrastructure, water and sewer, good roads, good schools, good parks, that's what brings business here. But politically, if you look across the nation, the most conservative places in the world are the place where the people are the poorest.
Right. So
I just say to you, I think that statistically and facts-wise, there's a different way to go to attract people to come here. But that being said, Salisbury, its population grew 33% between. So this idea that everybody's leaving,
not true.
It's not true. But the difficulty is that these same 25 people are the ones developing the strip malls where the poor are just staying poor. The upward economic mobility does not exist here. And that's what we need to address. And I don't know whether or not that's through raising the minimum wage inside Salisbury. I don't know whether or not that means capping the number of rental properties that we're allowed to have. Some of the people running have sort of threw this bone to me, like, Jim, don't talk about it anymore. We'll just get stricter. We'll make it a little harder to pass inspection. And I'm not interested in tinkering around the edges. I'm going to give the vote to the mayor, to Mayor Day, when he needs it on the things that are incredibly important to have us moving forward. And that will be what the struggle is for me, is how to make sure that I give him the votes that he needs, as he has done for me, but also retain my sense of identity and understanding that I am from the Salisbury of have-nots. And I'm not interested in being in the city of haves, because they already have enough. And the question is how do you convince those other people who haven't been in this fight for 40 years like I have, who haven't lived it like I have? And I can only hope that my passion and my examples of it, 707 Camden Avenue, with 90 calls to the police in the last 5 years, you have to do something about this, whether or not that person is on your campaign finance sheet or has drinks with you at Green Hill or not. And I say that with respect to that candidate, that city councilwoman, and that person who owns the property. But
not to mention that golf club.
Well, exactly. And it's a beautiful view because, I've been there to give proclamations to several groups. But my conscience is clear, Greg, that I did the best that I could. I did exactly what I was supposed to do. It all happened exactly as I thought it would. The ups, the downs, the good, the bad, the phone, Luray, Webster, the whole bit. It's exactly how it should have gone, because anyone who's going to change a place significantly, like I believe that I did, was going to be faced with arrows and slings coming as fast as they possibly could all the time. But I'm intact.
Right.
I'm a little overweight, and I got a little bit more gray hair than I'd like. But here's an opportunity to continue to serve, to continue to be a voice for the poor, for our neighborhoods, for our elderly people, for our single families. And I can't see doing anything different. We're going to have to wait and see, what happens over the next couple years as the economy picks up. Poor people can't just sit and hope that they have gas points from the Giant or the Gordy Tiger Mart and hope that gas comes down to under $1, like somehow that's gonna make the difference. We have to work on our opiate problem, our heroin problem, to try and make some of these neighborhoods safer and reduce. And we've got to figure out how to do the juxtaposition between kids who are getting beaten by police officers on TV and kids who are riding down Snow Hill Road, popping wheelies, giving the bird to everybody. We have to. I think the thing that some of the people who run for office don't understand is that when you take a vote, you're going to piss somebody off. And if you're not ready to do that, this is not the business you should be in. Because leadership is leading. And that means not everybody gets what they want, or everybody is going to go do what it is that they need to do. So I'm excited. I'm knocked on now about 500 doors. And it is amazing how many times I've been to the same houses over and over again. So tell me, come on, ask me a hard question.
We're out of time.
No! One hard question, come on.
One hard question?
Yeah.
Why didn't you get some consensus on rent control before you went in there and fought that fight?
It
was almost like you wanted to get beaten up.
Two reasons. Getting beaten up by Stu Lear and Richard Inslee only makes sure that the people who live in my neighborhoods know that I'm their champion. The minute those two people stand up, the people who vote in city elections, the 2,700 people who vote in city elections, know exactly what side you're on. That didn't have any chance of passing, and yes, it was odd that it came up right when it did. But I think having that conversation and knowing the amount of money that they're making exposed exactly the type of people that we have on the city council right now for their true selves. Mr. Spees, great report. I hated that you did it right now. Well, does that mean you're for it or you're against it? Mr. Heath, this isn't what I wanted. Well, then you should have been here 40 years ago when the fight started. Mrs. Shields, who takes their money, and Mrs. Mitchell, who takes their money. We knew where that was going to go. It was important to me that we begin to address the issue or to just talk about it, because Salisbury is one of those places where we just kind of go, well, you know how it is. And I don't think we should do that. Plus, I have to run an election as well. And I wanted it to be perfectly clear, not only to the people who live in my neighborhood who are homeowners, but the poor people who live in my neighborhoods who don't vote. I think they need to know whose side somebody in City Hall, whose side that City Hall is on. Systematic change is always going to be hard for this place, but you have to have the courage and the intestinal fortitude to do it. I knew I was going to spend an hour and a half getting slapped down that night, but when the head of the Salisbury Area property owners and the head of Fairfax Station Realty got up and said, who cares if Salisbury's 80% rental?
I was stunned by that.
I'm not. It is an amazing sense of testicular fortitude, which is the only way to say that you can get up in that room, say what you said, and have everyone on the city council go, oh, okay. That's why I'm running for office. That's why I'm going to keep running for office. That's why I'm going to win this election and why I'm going to keep up the good fight.
He's Jim Ireton. He's got the passion. You can't deny that. He's running for city council in District 4. He's been a great mayor. I'm going to miss having him as mayor. Thank you,
Thanks,
Jim.
Greg. I appreciate it.
Good luck. Greg Bassett, another interview for city council candidates, another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.
Thank you.